Our mission, and we choose to accept it, is zero injuries and zero environmental impact. A healthy workforce and environment is key to our nation's continued success. The Mission Zero podcast is a deep dive with the industry's top experts into the health, safety, and environmental aspects of today's workplace. Our mission is to be a platform for new ideas and strategies that, when implemented, will improve our safety, our environment, and how we govern out business. We are making the world safer, and we're going to have fun doing it.
Okay, welcome everybody back to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Mission Zero podcast. Today, my guest, a very special guest, very honored to have John Lewis. John is the Vice President of HSE for one of the world's largest frac companies, especially in the United States, Nextier Oilfield Services. Welcome, John.
Glad to be here.
Been wanting to have John on for a while. Obviously, Nextier, one of the premier companies in America, safety leader, a leader in just about every category in the oilfield industry. But first, we want to start out, John, wherever you want to start, give us a little background about yourself, where you're from, where you came from, what brought you to today.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me. It's always great to see you guys. I spent 10 years in the military, joined the Army right out of high school in Southern California, and ran with them for 10 years. Did a lot of crazy things. And right at the end of my career, coming back from the first Iraq deployment, I got picked up by Schlumberger. There were a lot of guys being invited to these veterans hiring events, and they had a heavy presence back then. Funny thing is, they told me I was going to go to an interview for the Oilfield, and the first thing I told them is I didn't want to go back overseas because I had no idea we had oil fields here still, right?
Yeah.
So pretty neat in that regard. But yeah, I met with them, and within 24 hours, I was on a plane to Rock Springs, Wyoming, to meet the potential new boss at Schlumberger. So pretty cool. And spent 3 years with Schlumberger up in the Rockies on a frac crew, learning, going through all the equipment. It's kind of a supervisor and training for veterans program that they had. Enjoyed it, loved Wyoming, and got an offer to come back to Texas to be part of a private equity startup pressure pumping outfit called Diamondback. It was running out of the Barnett Shale and had a district in Marlow, Oklahoma. Small outfit that ended up becoming a pretty impressive pressure pumping group. And we eventually sold that to Superior Well Services, which was a publicly traded company back then. And, by this time, I'd worked my way up through the ranks, got to enjoy the frac coordinator positions, and eventually, running the frac department there in the Barnett Shale. Eventually district manager on the operations side. And then planted our flag in the Eagle Ford. And in 2010, about the same time, we then sold Superior to Neighbors Completion and Production Services. Eventually moved into regional director of operations slot. We had multiple product lines, and was over the Permian and South Texas for a while. So ran regional operations for that group for a few years. Then kind of got the idea that maybe Neighbors was losing the flavor for pumping. And about the same time, started having conversations with Baker Hughes on the side, just a few lunches. My wife had worked over there, so what turned out to be social events ended up being recruiting events.
Pseudo interviews.
Yeah. So long story short, man, I moved over to Baker Hughes and did the same thing for Baker. Ran pressure pumping for their southern region till about the time we hit the Halliburton acquisition, which was also 2015. And we all took it really hard, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much the Southern Division, all our rigs laid down overnight. So I went over to the integration team, and the Halliburton deal did not go through. and almost immediately after that, we got into the BJ deal. So I was part of the group that helped spin off Baker Hughes land pressure pumping to BJ, and I really didn't have a job to go to after that in terms of operations, other than going back with BJ. And I was asked to take quality in HSE for the acquisition, and that was my first few months of really getting into QHSE, which I immediately obviously started enjoying a lot. Went over to BJ Services, and then I got a call from Jack Hinton over at Baker Hughes inviting me back over to take on North America HSE. So that was my first big intro.
Interesting name to
taking
hear.
it on.
I would love to have him come on this podcast. A safety legend.
He's Yoda.
Yeah.
He's
Go ahead.
Yoda.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, man, he's probably one of the most influential leaders of my career,
Yeah.
without a doubt. Right,
A legend. Yeah.
and one that really got me hooked on HSC. But so yeah, it was one of those calls that, wow, HSC for the largest region in Baker Hughes, that scares the hell out of me. Yeah, let's do it. I'd like to do that. So moved back over to Baker, and for a few years was the director of HSC operations for North America, 5 countries. Enjoyed the hell out of it, learned a ton. Of course, Baker Hughes, tip of the spear in HSC back then, right? So the training and everything that was learned and obtained back in those times, just ultra powerful. But started missing the frac. No more frac. It was, all the other Baker product lines, and just an excellent opportunity had come up with Keene at one point, about the time we were still, changing the identity of Baker Hughes to GE. And, that's when Robert Drummond's name popped. Hey, he's the new CEO at Keene, and almost overwhelmingly all my coworkers at the executive level at Baker, most of them had worked for or around Robert at the time, and just overwhelming was like, oh man, you got to go do that.
Yeah.
You got to go over there and work for this guy, because leadership's everything to me. And so I went to interview, and immediately super impressed by Robert and the smaller outfit, pure pressure pumping. And I was like, and I really would like to take everything that I've learned and have been doing over here at Baker, get back with my core product lines with a smaller group and really get busy. And yeah, man, that's how it happened. VP of QHSE for Keene, and now Nextier.
Now, I want to circle back a little bit, and I don't want to dig too much into your personal history, because really what we want to talk about is your safety philosophy and what's going on there. But so born and raised in Southern California, you said?
That's right.
Joined the Army at 18?
Yes.
So a little bit dig a little bit deeper in that. Well, you said one deployment. And this is, outside of this podcast, this is where, you and I connected. I'm sitting out, and I'm talking to your right-hand man out in West Texas, and he goes, you have got to sit down with my boss. You guys are, your backgrounds and your everything you've ever done is almost identical in the Army and everything. But I can't say that, I was a gun bunny. You were a grunt, so I can't say that it was exactly my lifestyle was as tough as yours. But a little bit about you went to basic training where?
Fort Benning.
Fort Benning. I went to SEAL. And you go ahead and just give a little bit about your Army history.
Yeah, so great career. I guess I'd be considered a midtermer getting out, halfway before it's over. But no, that's all I ever wanted to do growing up. I never wanted to entertain anything other than, military service. I was, that generation, Ronald Reagan, G.I. Joe,
oh, yeah.
Rambo was my hero. So I was all about warfare and, going and getting those first confirmed kills on the block kind of thing, like Full Metal Jacket. But no, I jumped right in and had a great career. Again, infantry, made Sergeant E5 within 3 years.
So you were an enlisted man, not an officer.
I was an enlisted man. Got out
Me too.
an E6 promotable status if I'd have done another year, and just had one more duty to make 7. But no, I got to enjoy being a team leader at a very young age, and then eventually got my own squad and ran a platoon for a while. did a year in Korea, did a year in the Balkans, post Balkans War, stabilization force, stationed in Texas and Kansas. Again, spent a lot of time at Fort Benning.
Yeah.
Being that's the home of the infantry, so all the leadership academies. And
So I was at SIL a lot. Yeah.
Yep. Actually did my PLDC at SIL.
Nice. Okay.
Great career. Enjoyed it a lot.
Mhm.
Still miss the free ammo and throwing hand grenades, but really enjoyed it. Again, I would have finished out, 20 hadn't some extenuating circumstances kind of pop while I was on deployment. And
How many times were you deployed?
for the War on Terror?
No, just period. How many times? Well, let me re-ask that question in the way we both understand it. How many times were you deployed to theater?
Well, so two times of what's considered a combat tour.
Okay.
The Balkans was considered, even though it was a kind of a peacetime mission.
Still theater.
We got all the expeditionary badging for it.
Yeah.
I fired one shot that whole year. Iraq was a little different.
Yeah.
Fired a few more shots over there, but I'd say, in terms of hardcore combat deployment, 1 year qualifies for that, and that's the first year, 2003, of the invasion of Iraq.
In the reason I wanted you to expand on that a little bit is because, and I'll get to it, but people that were never in the Army, that were never in the military, they think our training is entirely how to kill, but really, I'd say more of it was the majority of it was probably is the saving of lives, how to keep each other safe, and so I know that had to bleed itself into you becoming a safety professional in another field, right? In the civilian world. So I'll get to that. So, we're here today. You're Vice President of Nextier, and the reason I know you got a very buttoned up safety program is because I haven't been servicing or selling to or cooperating with the Oilfield probably about 8 to 10 years. And in that 8 to 10 years, there is a direct correlation between how well companies do and how well their safety program is. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but it's a damn sure direct reflection of what they're doing. And so that's always there. And so, as far as, there's a couple of things about Nextier's safety programs I'd like to ask you, but can you give me an idea of, as a safety leader of a company that's now approaching 4,000 people, probably 5,000 sometime this year, what is your general safety philosophy for the oil field and energy sector?
Well, so take it back to the comments on the military, right? That's one of the first things that I had reminded myself of years ago, even in operations. And the operations side, I was still obviously heavy on safety. And I've always understood that there is a direct correlation between getting it right in safety, service quality, and everything else falling in line. That's a fact, right? So it's always been an area of focus. But when you've been in the military and you've learned how to influence the human brain to go into a completely uncontrolled environment, granted, the training and the programming is off the charts compared to what we do in the oil field sector, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're sending a group of young people into a completely uncontrolled environment. You have no idea what's going to happen, and everybody gets out of there alive. And it's under the absolute most extreme conditions. We're not talking about slips, trips, falls, and dropping a sledgehammer on your foot.
Yeah.
We're talking about things blowing up, rounds flying, but yet you get out of there unscathed. Outside of that training, it's how you manage the individual, right? You were talking about, some people have this idea of the training in the professional military. It's not what you see on TV in World War II or everybody getting screamed at. It's very personal.
Yeah.
You have to lead the individual at times. Yeah, there's a time for group leading, but the more you know about each individual and how they tick, how they react, the more you can influence those actions in your favor.
One thing I've told people that I think shocks people about the Army is that almost all drill sergeants have a degree in psychology. They're not none of these things they think is crazy. They're all a part of a plan, and it's all really studied in on human psychology.
Absolutely.
So, but go ahead.
And
go ahead.
HSE, is, it's the same way, right? I always take the approach that, if you're going to go into a completely uncontrolled environment, you have no idea what's going to happen, and everybody gets out of there alive. And it's under the absolute most extreme conditions. We're not talking about slips, trips, falls, and dropping a sledgehammer on your foot. We're talking about things blowing up, rounds flying, but yet you get out of there unscathed. Outside of that training, it's how generally what we focus on is just the barriers and controls, regular HSE blocking and tackling. But there's always that human error residual risk, always, right? And we even put it in our risk logs. Hey, we got controls and we got all this great stuff. That one thing hanging out there that we can't control is when some human being goes off the reservation on us.
Yeah.
BS. We can absolutely control that. Now, granted, there's a very small percentage of those people who knowingly and willfully violate rules, but that's a very small percentage. So of all the other things that have the potential to go wrong and do go wrong in our business, just like we learn in our profession, what makes up that other 90-something percent?
Yeah.
Well, it's almost always human error. So we have to focus on the humans. Some of those concepts that come out of the military are perfect examples of that. Again, if we can do that in those environments, we should be able to deploy a frac crew, deploy a wireline crew with tuned up heads. Let's just assume you don't know anything, but I've tuned you up enough on self-awareness, situational awareness. You should be able to avoid errors, right? So that's a huge basis of our system. Obviously, it's, you have to have barriers and controls assurance. That's the number one focus, especially for those things that can kill or seriously harm. But you really absolutely have to cover down and spend a lot of time on the human brain, the human mindset, empowering, getting them to understand. And, we subscribe heavily to human beings are fallible.
Yeah.
Even, the best make mistakes, and we're extremely forgetful. Someone has to be reminding us of the most important things on a continuous basis.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they get going in a process, and they go through that process for 7 months, and it gets to be very comfortable. There's no injuries. There's nothing went wrong. And the one day
the deviation starts to occur.
Yeah.
That's
the
right.
one day. And that's what people used to, back in my work in manufacturing PPE, I would put together safety programs, right? And say, look, part of the safety program is let's take the thinking out of it. Let's not let them think. Let's say, okay, you're using this PPE if you're doing this work, right? The other thing was training. And, some of the companies I worked with, they would ask me, well, what kind of training is it? Like, how in-depth is it going to be? What's it going to concern? I'm like, that's only half of the reason for the training. The other half is to bring safety back to the frontal lobe. That's really what it is, because if they go a while, they get, they get comfortable and they forget things, and it starts to, it doesn't get reminded until they slip, until something happens. So
very easy to forget, especially in our business. It's very fast paced. We've got young supervisors with, tens of millions of dollars worth of assets they're responsible for, large groups of human beings. You got the customer you're trying to do a good job for. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of traps.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of situations that can influence you to forget something or to, mean to, but skip a few steps, right?
Yeah.
So you got to have certain mechanisms in there to make sure that doesn't happen.
Do y'all have anything remotely resembling a start card or checklist you go through before you start a job, anything like that at Nextier?
We've got a few.
Okay.
And again, outside of physical engineered barriers or even administrative controls, in order to better control the human error potential and focus on human performance, is to have continuous reinforcers and reminders. That's the only way, right?
Okay.
So in our program, I can really break that down into 3 major components. The first thing is, and just like this is taken right out of the military's playbook, along with the airline industry, nuclear regulatory, fire and rescue. First thing you have to do is establish situational awareness. So you've got to put focus on that briefing. Some people just think it's a safety briefing and you pull everybody together, check some blocks, sign the thing, go to work. However, that's your first opportunity to get everybody tuned up. What the hell are we even doing out here, right? Just like an operations, you remember operations order briefing.
Absolutely.
So if you listen to a well-executed Nextier briefing in the field, it will give you flashbacks to a 5-paragraph op order that you used to listen to before you go out and do a military exercise. Why? Because it's proven.
Yeah.
It's taking people into combat, into rescue situations. Planes don't fall out of the sky, and we all follow the same process.
Yeah.
Extremely important. So that's step 1. I can train you today, right? Take you to training, and if I don't tell you anything ever again, how the hell are you going to remember? So many times, you went to new hire. Yeah, a year ago. How the hell was I supposed to remember all the stuff you shoved down my throat? Right?
Yeah.
So I have to make sure that the first time you're in the field, I got to bring you back to day one so you don't forget the critical things.
Yeah.
Well, that's still not good enough, right? You can go to that pre-job safety briefing. The minute you walk away, there's a million factors that could just wipe that perfectly executed briefing that you were interacting with off the face of the map, right? Whether it's a text from the girlfriend, the boss is yelling at you, you got money problems, whatever it is, it's enough to take you off your game. Situational awareness just ducked, right? So then that's when the leading, employee-led programs come in that we focus on. So now we got things like observations, we got the reporting, keeping your head on a swivel, keeping you fresh, right? But more, directed towards your question, we've got the pause process. Okay, and pause, it's a process that's followed before anyone engages in any task. Again, anything could happen once you leave the briefing. A ton of things can happen from the first day you were trained. There's got to be a process in there to ensure, in a high hazard environment, that all the necessary checks are being done and the discussions are being had that heighten or either reestablish or maintain your situational awareness before you execute. And they're very short, just like a football huddle. These things, last anywhere from 7 to 30 seconds, depending on what we're about to do.
Yeah,
and that's
keep it within the job.
And that's it. It's reinforcing and reminding throughout the course of a 12-hour shift.
Okay,
is all it is. And that's, again, managing.
And who does that for Nextier? It can't be all HSE people, right? There's only so many of them.
It is not HSE
so
people.
Operations management, people like that, they're all responsible for this message.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're the facilitators of the program, but operations has to drive it, which they do, right? Yeah. It comes from them. HSE cannot be separate.
Yeah.
In a lot of places it is. Oh, we're going to do the HSE now, and now we're going to talk about execution. No. Taking the briefing, we're talking about what is dangerous with the sand system while we're talking about how much sand we owe the customer and at what concentrations we're going to be running it. So it all is ingrained in one another, where we may be talking about something that's execution, but right after that we're talking about the risks and the hazards and the area or whatever all together. It should flow together. It's everything's based on PBED in our system.
Yeah.
So it follows a natural operation cycle, not separate.
That's my usual co-host Justin Overstreet of Wildcat. He couldn't be here today, sadly, but his personal philosophy, like he talks about that on safety, and he became my co-host after he was my first interview for the podcast. And one thing he said was he made a note, is like, look, safety is your problem, not my problem. It's our problem, right? And so everybody's an HSE person. He said, you've got to be empowered to make this your responsibility. And, people call, is this a hazard? I don't know. Is it? You touch that stuff. You figure that out. Yeah. You find out if you figure that out on your own. And he said, it's basically empowering. He's like, look, you got to make safety calls. You operations people, where I can give you a basic guideline of how I want things run, but you're the ones in the field, and you have to decide that yourself. So you have to take safety into your own hands. That's a little bit his philosophy. I think it works probably pretty well. It kind of sounds like what you're doing is saying, look, you can't be waiting around for an HSC rep to come into you and see what you're doing wrong and correct you. You've got to be self-correcting.
That's right.
Your teammates got to be self-correcting, and I've seen some companies, they'll have the I think that's what you were saying when you said pause, where anybody can be stopped. And so a CEO or something will walk through a plant and he'll purposely forget his glasses or his hard hat to see who's got the gravitas to come up and check the CEO or the VP of the company. And some poor soul always puts their life on the line and does it, and they win because
they get rewarded.
That's what they're looking for. They're looking for people to say, look, it doesn't matter who it is. Everybody's responsible for everyone else. And that's the philosophy you got to have, because and that's why I know a little bit about Nextier through seeing Matt and his teams and how the safety works. But I wanted to ask you that question because I wanted to make that apparent. Is like, it's really the safest companies drill in safety culture from everybody. It's not just, you can't look at and I'm babbling here, but you can't look at safety as something you do when you know the HSE rep is out in the shop or in the field. You got to do it at all times. So
yeah. Well, I mean, the last thing you want is HSE could very easily convert an organization into a dependent organization, right? And in the past, we have done everything for everyone, and that doesn't move the needle at all.
Doesn't.
So, and we're dealing with one of the biggest challenges in our industry right now is, that one line item that says, do supervisors always follow the rules even when management's not looking?
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Young supervisors, again, we
They're
talked
looking
about
for it.
all of the responsibility and the action and the changes and everything that's going on location. They can very easily unknowingly deviate or not follow up on stuff, right? So it's focusing on who's controlling the work out in the field, right? Because again, we're talking about human performance management, right? You have to be connected with the troops to be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
So, working on the engagement and the skill level of some of our younger, new up-and-coming leaders in the field is equally important to all of this, because at the end of the day, if they're not getting it done, then it's not getting done, right? So, yeah, education, teaching as many people all of these skills and this awareness of things, because a lot of this is not normal to what we do in our industry. There's only a few organizations that I am aware of that do the full gamut on human performance, and Chevron's one of them. Chevron's got their system aligns perfectly with ours. We kind of all have the same background: Fisher IT, the E-Colors, Aero. That's our discipline, base discipline at Nextier. It's also with them. Shell. Some people, that's what I call trying to get it right, is having that heavy focus on the human beings around there.
Okay.
But
Great.
so anyway, very necessary.
Well, I want to make a little bit of pivot to the E part of the HSC, and just kind of, no true question here, but just, environmental is obviously a key cog in every oil fields discussion at all time. Any energy company is talking about it. And, I've talked to several companies, and the best ones, and again, Nextier is absolutely one of the best companies out there, making pretty rapid efficiency improvements, pretty rapid environmental improvements. I'm going to ask you about that. But first, I forgot to at the beginning, but I want to thank the tasting room in City Center here for allowing us to use their beautiful wine room, their beautiful private room to record this podcast. I can't thank them enough for being so gracious to let us have the room. But to the question, so next year, largest natural gas burning fleet in America, right? Or either close to it, or maybe the largest one. What has some technology that Nextier has launched recently? Maybe if it be electric frac or whatever it is you're doing that's improved environmental that you guys brag about?
Well, in addition to having the largest natural gas capable fleet, we also have the infrastructure to support it now, right? Not only ours, but we're also providing natural gas and field gas to some of our peers.
Nice.
And to various customers. So that's another product line that we kicked off. But the natural gas burning Tier 4 DGB components that we have either built from the ground up or have retrofitted some of our existing units after the fact are in full force and fully booked. Because that's what everybody's looking for. And we went through this kind of transitionary period over the last few years. What's ideal? Everybody's getting excited over electric, but still, you got to have these, humongous power generation units on location, and but being able to burn field gas.
That's the brilliant move.
That is a solution a lot of customers are looking for, and we've been able to, just come in and provide it from the ground all the way up.
Can you give a macro view of that? And because the reason I say that is because not everyone listening is an oil field person. And again, I'm one of those, right? I've never worked in the oil field myself, but Before there was a lot of loss of natural gas, right? It was either burned off or
Sure.
or whatever reason. And now what you're doing is taking that loss that was coming into the environment either through a fire or release. Was it release? Was that ever happening, or was that wasn't supposed to? But it
flaring
was
off.
flaring
When
off.
trying
Okay,
to burn
flaring
gas,
is what they
yeah.
call it. But now you're taking that was being flared off and actually using it to fuel the pumps you were using before. Therefore, closing that loop, really, right?
That's right.
In killing that killing that environmental problem.
You're getting a few things out of that,
Yeah.
right? So I'll try to keep it as high level and simple as possible. But you look at these 2,500 horsepower engines, diesel burning engines, and you could have 30 of them on location. That's a lot of emissions,
Yeah.
right? I mean, just pure horsepower, billowing black smoke in the air for years. By burning that fuel gas, yes, gas is not, $3, whatever it is right now. That's not super profitable. A lot of places don't have the infrastructure to pipe it out anyway. So you burn it off in the atmosphere. That creates carbon footprint, right?
Sure.
You feed that to the trucks, you not only get the benefit of not having to flare off that gas, but even more so, you're not burning all that diesel, right? And we're not talking about, some of these units they'll do about a 50% combustion rate, right?
Yeah.
50% gas, 50% diesel.
Gotcha.
And then some will just be,
Gas.
purely driven on gas. But they can be supplied through that fuel gas, again, that have the benefits that we just mentioned, and or compressed natural gas. So you could get it either way. But the emissions that come from the natural gas burning units are obviously far less than just burning diesel in the atmosphere, and a huge cost driver for customers. Right, diesel's expensive. Flaring off the gas is expensive.
I had Tim Lowry from Applied Cryogenic Technologies on here. And they do machinery for the compressed natural gas, and they're ahead of the field. Like they're pretty advanced with that stuff. So it's been interesting between talking to someone on your side of it and someone on his side of it. It's been pretty interesting to learn about it. But yeah, that's I think that's a win right there. I think that's a big win for everybody. I think it's a big win for Nextier. I think it's a big win for the environment and everybody that champions that, right? Because that's obviously something that's been in contention with the oil and gas companies since the beginning, probably at some point or level. But one thing too, in the news, I guess it's been a while now, but Nextier had a acquisition. I don't know, is it acquisition of Alamo, or was it a merger, or what? It was a merger?
Well, we'll call it an acquisition.
Okay. Well, Alamo pressure pumping, one of the most respected companies out there.
Oh yeah.
And those boys got it done. They were
good.
They were efficient. They were productive. So when I heard about that happening, I was like, oh man, Nextier pulled off the coup, because I had talked to I was friends with their VPs, and there were a lot of people trying to make that happen. There were a lot of big companies that were trying to acquire Alamo to their team because they're efficient, right? They do a damn good job. How has that been as far from a safety perspective? Combining two companies. I know you just did this with Keene, right? And I know you had the unbelievable headache of that. And I've asked people about this in the past because we talked about safety being a heavy cultural thing, right? So you're having two cultures meet. So you had Keene and C&J, two cultures meet. No matter where they are on the spectrum, that's going to be good luck figuring that jigsaw puzzle out. But bring in, I'll be more recent and just ask you about Alamo. How difficult is it to bring in a company like that and combine it with your company and get everybody on board with your safety philosophy?
Easier than I've ever seen.
Nice.
Ever.
Okay.
And to be frank, every time there's a merger or an acquisition, you always hear that key phrase, oh, we've got our cultures are completely the same. The cultures align. And in most of my acquisitions or mergers, which I've been to several, that's usually bullshit.
Yeah.
It's usually not the case.
Yeah.
Right?
More PR fluff.
That couldn't be more the case between Nextier and Alamo. just pure execution.
Nice.
Driven on perfection. I know personally some of the folks that help lead that business, and I know how effective they are. One of them, as a matter of fact, was my mentor at Schlumberger when I was a new up-and-comer. That was one of the frac crew that I was on that now runs frac on that side. So as soon as I heard his name, that spoke for itself, right?
Yeah.
But the entire leadership team at Alamo, they all have exceptional reputations, and their service record is just incredible. So that was the first time I actually seen two things that just totally came together as like it was meant to be, right?
And even on the business side, it was meant to be. Like that was a perfect fit.
Perfect fit.
Yeah. So that was good to see. Talking to industry leaders, consolidation was something that was certainly going to happen throughout the oil field, and it's happened, and it continues to happen, right? And last year we didn't see, and I was telling some guys I know, about the listening in on people and learning, and you didn't see the CapEx investment that you would have thought you would have seen in 2021 that I think you're now seeing. So, oilfield companies are growing a lot, and and that is in my experience, in my conversations, injuries are about 75% likely to be someone who's pretty new. Is that? Would you think that would be in next year as well? If you have accidents, it's probably a new person.
Yeah. Yes. However, we at Nextier we classify our short service employees kind of in two buckets, right?
Mm.
We treat everybody as a short service employee. If you're a rehire and you've been separated for more than 6 months, we're going to bring you in and treat you like brand new again, just to make sure.
Mm.
However, if you're new to the industry, it's a mandatory sentence. If you've got experience, you can come out of your green hat, for lack of better terms, based on your assessment and if you're ready or not. Could be tomorrow, could be 3 months from now. Surprisingly, and this, I'm glad to see this, the short service employees hitting the grid for instance, say in 2021, were not new to the industry, thankfully so, 'cause we would expect you're coming fresh out of training and you're definitely following all the rules. But it's short service employee with experience is actually where we've seen most of them, which again, in my world, that gives me a focus on that kind of knowledge-based performance where I think I know what I'm doing, but you don't, right? Oh, I know this. I've been doing this for years.
Confidence.
But you're not following the process.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're following the process from the last place you worked. We need you to follow our process. So the majority of those short service employee incidents have actually been short service, yes, but coming from somewhere else. And even
habits.
Used to work for us.
Yeah.
Right? Go through the training. I've heard this all before. Not me. I got my shit together. No, actually, you're not ready.
And for those who don't know, John mentioned green hat and I don't know if this is just exclusively an oil field thing, but new people wear green hats. The hard hats are green, so others around them can recognize that they're new and I guess kind of keep a sharp eye on them, right? Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, and in some circles that's considered old school. The green hat in some circles over time started to turn into some kind of derogatory new guy thing. However, we put that back into place because we thought that was important.
It's a good thing.
You got to have that visual. I want to know who doesn't have the experience, who hasn't been on. As soon as I go to location, and again, you go on one of ours, and you'll be able to distinguish between absolutely new and there's a green hat, but there's a big sticker on it that says I got experience, but I'm new to Nextier. Mm-hmm. So it's just being able to focus on one group in one way, focus on another group in another way. They got different needs between the two of them. Mm-hmm. The ones folks with experience tend to get a little overconfident. Let's just say maybe not pay attention and follow the steps because you've been doing it so long, and you think you have it memorized, but you don't. And again, that's why we focus heavily on following procedures step by step, because you may think you know, but you don't.
You don't know.
That's right.
So it's taking a step back on the culture and the things you're doing to, integrate culture into Nextier. You are doing a lot of things, and I've got to see a little bit of it, and it's impressive, and it's cool, and it's a way to communicate with your workers, to get them involved, to get them in step, and get them motivated to do this, and just a failings program. And I'm not even going to bother trying to explain any of it. I'm going to let you sell that and tell that program exactly what it is and what you're doing, because it's super cool.
That's going to be a tough one. We're so passionate about it. I'll try to sum it up, but so we've had a pretty solid system, through Keen that we developed. However, and it was extremely effective. And what really prompted failings right off the bat, it was 2 customers that said, "Hey man, you guys got a really cool program. Can you explain it to us?" I'm like, this thing doesn't even have a name. We just call it our safety system.
Yeah.
This was happening about the same time that we were drawing down, right? So we kind of brought it back to the drawing board and said, man, we're about to probably reduce our HSE staff by 70%, right? So this means that our program has to be so easy, clear, and effective, because supervisors in the field and mid-level managers are going to have to do more of the executing on behalf of our HSE systems with less hand-holding, right? So the first thing we wanted to do is give it a name, right? So, of course, warrior culture, a lot of us that subscribe to that stuff. We did some, brainstorming, and we came up with phalanx, which, again, the ancient formation of interlocking shields, protecting the man to your left and right and the rear. It really fit, right?
Yeah, so for the people out there, it's what you saw in the movie 300 when they lined up with each other and worked in a unit. Everybody depended on everyone else in every way possible. That's the phalanx, and
right.
And so that's why you kind of went to that.
We adopted the phalanx. We were able to come up with some really cool, icons and badging to get everybody kind of jacked up about it. Most guys like the movie 300.
Yeah.
If you're military, first responder, you can absolutely relate to the Spartan logo, because it's warrior culture. It's just like the Punisher logo. It's something that we see a lot. However, Nextier is the only one with the proprietary Spartan helmet with a hard hat on it. That's ours.
Nice.
Nobody else can have it. So, we started with a name, gave it a designation, and really dug into just a really, strong, simplified approach, but with a lot of advanced, approaches within it, like the human performance stuff, right?
Yeah.
That we even teach a lot of that to our new employees, new hire. We got the phalanx program, and that is what we call our tactical package, right? It's where our strategy, we've got our HSE strategy. We explain to everybody, this is where we're going. This is what has to be in place. The phalanx is what you utilize in the field tactically to get there, to ensure 100% safe operations. And it's been extremely effective. But again, it's like all systems, you have to train to it, you have to utilize it in order for it to be successful. But we've had a lot of success from it. It's really picked up where, we got this huge, phalanx store with all kinds of cool, we got our own clothing line and all that.
So they can order from inside internal things?
They don't have to order anything. We'll bring it to you.
Oh, nice.
Right. So
Very cool.
I do a lot of shipping, or, executive leadership will go to the field and give guys awards, but it's really starting to pick up in the sense that people want the swag, they want the recognition.
They feel part of the process.
They feel part of the process, and
That's
HSE
huge.
should be cool.
Yeah.
QHSE should be cool. It is cool when you go out there and you say, dude, we just kicked ass. Nobody got hurt, gave the customer more than what he was asking for. We won today, right? And we've got this thing that we're starting to rally with, and it's HSE. And again, where it's being embraced and it's being and people are real successful with it, I'm telling you, their performance is just incredible in the field. Not just HSE performance, incident free, obviously, but the amount of hours that are being pumped, the amount of wireline runs, it is absolutely translating into service quality as well.
Yeah,
right?
because you guys have the largest wireline group too, right?
That's correct.
That's So, next year having this, we talked about the program, right, and all the things you're doing and the stellar safety record that you have right now. And I'm sitting here and looking at the news, and I'm seeing Nextier Oilfield Solutions, 83% return over 1 year. Things are going well.
Yeah,
the whole leadership team is killing it. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, and like I said, it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. There is a direct association between companies that take safety seriously and companies that do well all around. There's just an absolute relation there. John, I can't thank you enough. I don't want to take you out, your whole day here. We're doing this during your lunch hour, but I greatly appreciate you taking the time for me. I know your time is very valuable. You're busy. You're keeping 3,700 people safe right now, and I wanted your expertise. I wanted your being a veteran myself, obviously that puts you and I, a little bit closer. And I really wanted someone to talk about where they, how they conjured up their civilian leadership style through their experience there. I knew it was there. I knew it was there when I saw what you were doing, and that's why I desperately wanted to get you. And I'm glad Matt hooked us up so we could do this. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and I appreciate it.
Appreciate you letting me come on and talk about all those things that we love.
All right. Hope to have you again, maybe a year or so. We can circle back and see what's going on and talk about it again.
Yep, let's do it.
Have a good one.
All right.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show and accept the mission. Please subscribe to the Mission Zero podcast on your preferred streaming service and be sure to give us a 5-star review.